Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Spotlight series. Hi, Bruce. How are you?
Hey,
I
Tiago.
can I kind of recognize where you are right now, but I'll leave it to the community to try to guess where you are. So this week we are going to present the topic of collaboration using private data. From all the Spotlight series that we have been presenting, probably, and the one that we're still going to present next week, is probably the one that is the most exciting. It's not most exciting from a typical blockchain user, from an individual, private individual in society, but as a use case for MPC technology and how I envision Partisia blockchain in being used in the future is the one that really tickles me quite a lot. Would you like to take it from here?
Yeah, so hello everybody. Again, I'm at the Aarhus, Denmark office. This is where all the technology happens. I'm in a small conference room here, and so I'm really glad that you mentioned that because this use case, I believe, is the core. I think the core of what Partisia blockchain is trying to do, and so. Um, we can kind of talk about it in many different angles because it's such a wide and varied topic. We can call it, collaboration with shared data. We can call it, collaboration between like mutually distrustful parties. We can kind of call it like private data lake, which is like a corporate speak for collaborating and putting your data into a data lake and being able to compute and extract interesting information out of it. This allows a new paradigm of how trust is established between two different entities or multiple different entities, like any kind of a
Mhm.
relationship, right? So one of the things that I think is important to define is trust, and how do we establish trust, right? So Tiago, I know you have a lot of uh, clinical neuropsychology
Mhm.
uh, expertise. So I wanted to actually ask you, when we talk about trust, what does that mean to you specifically?
Well, trust is a very hard topic to define. When we come into this world, we are pre-wired that everything is dangerous. Everything is
Mm,
out there to get us. It's inbuilt in our system, the flight or fight mechanism, and it's really about lowering your barriers, and that is one of the hardest things to do. So when you meet someone in society that you distrust because you don't know them. You don't know you've only just met them. You have to hear them talk. You have to see them, the body language. You have to establish a relationship. And slow and steady, you start giving a bit more of yourself and vice versa. And it's a two-way communication system.
yeah,
So,
I
so
think, yeah.
I mean, we could write encyclopedias about the topic, but in a nutshell, it is a natural trust or distrust is a natural self-defense mechanism against external harm.
Yeah. There's a couple of things, that was an amazing description of, of what trust was. I was looking at it from a, very, uh, limited angle, but you kind of explored a lot of different nuances and aspect of trust. Some of the key words that really, spoke to me, was that you're actually born mistrusting everything. And to me, that really helps to define what we mean by like mutually distrustful parties. Because I've always thought that at a certain level, there's always a certain level of like, mistrust between any kind of a relationship, right? And so mutually distrustful parties could really mean like a relationship between anyone with anyone or any company with any company. There's always a level of, hey, I need to protect myself, right? The other really interesting comment that I thought was like, exactly, was that it takes time. It takes time for you to build that trust. It's about vulnerability. It's about giving a little piece, and then you're taking a little piece from the other person, and give and take, and gradually you're building that trust. And the other aspect that I thought was really interesting, you mentioned is like it's also very like individualistic. It's very relative to the person. Some people might have a very high risk tolerance, and some people may not. Whether it's a person or a business or even governments, right? So these are like very interesting concepts that I thought that really kind of weave into how we define and how we practice trust between different any kind of a relationship that we have. Right? So it's always like a balance for me. It's like, as an example, the risk that I took to take the position with Partisia blockchain really had to do with both the trust that I have with what the team was building and the culture of the organization versus my own risk that I have in regards to where I was at my career. So, I was single, I had no kids. And so that allowed me to have a lower risk profile and take that risk and join move from a very established, the 175-year organization that I was at, to a startup, because of my risk profile that I was able to balance against what I thought that the Partisia Blockchain Foundation team would be able to accomplish, and how I would fit into that organization. Now, if I was
And and
married, I had
and
multiple kids,
and let
that
me
risk
ask you this
profile would be
question.
different, right? Yeah.
Did it take you one day to decide?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, one day to decide.
One day to decide, or was it like slow and steady? Okay, so you asked a question, they asked you a question, you scoped the team out, you scoped the technology, you little by little, there was this data exchange between, not because at the same time on the other side, people in Denmark was
Yes.
always, okay, so who is Bruce? What's his background? Okay, what is he about? What does he want? So it's slow and steady. This relationship started being built, and it was exactly through a very calculated and measured exchange of information that this relationship ended up happening.
Yeah. So yes, it took a give and take. I had to learn the culture. I wanted to learn the culture. I wanted to learn the technology. Of course, all of that took time, and Partija Blockchain Foundation also needed to know who I was, and we built that relationship through time. And when the offer was made, that decision was instant for me, right? Because I already knew then that this was what I wanted what I wanted to get engaged with. But yes, to your point, it was a lengthy period of time before we were able to establish that trust between each other, right? And so how do we change that? How do we change that dynamic? How do we create a new paradigm of being able to collaborate between, again, what we talked about, mutually distrustful parties? And I think that's what multi-party computation allows us to do. It allows us to change how the game is played, you know. And I think we're going to go over that in our slide a little bit. So.
Let's jump straight into it.
Okay. So as we mentioned earlier, I think today's topic really could be defined in many different ways, or titled in many different ways. The way I titled it is, collaboration between mutually distrustful parties, or, AKA a private data lake, using, corporate lingo, so to speak, because I think this topic is it's a really interesting use case for everybody, but especially in the enterprise world. So, last week, or actually a couple of different weeks, we talked about the problem of anonymity, or complete transparency in a particular system, and how that actually breaks down trust. So, we talked about the fact that trust is actually very difficult. And especially when nobody is willing to share any information about each other. Last week we talked about the dating app, where if you don't show a picture and you're anonymous, there's no trust that can be built. But it could be other things as well. Even from a business perspective, if I'm looking to get a loan in a bank, but I'm not willing to expose myself and give the bank the information that they need to build that trust, there's no way a bank would give me a loan. And conversely, if the bank is also unwilling to expose themselves about their book of business, how they're structured, and what you know, their loan informations are, and what the the different conditions for the loan is, I would never take that loan, right? And so, uh, when nobody's willing to share data between each other, the trust is impossible. But then on the other side, when you have a full disclosure of every information from anyone inside that system to everyone, it leads to unfair practices, even playing fields, and it actually increases distrust. We talked about the front running issue in Ethereum as an example, as a blockchain example, where this problem of front running is actually occurring because of a completely opposite and of opposite uh, way front running is done in the traditional system. This actually happens because you actually have too much transparency, and again, people are taking advantage and creating an uneven playing field. So I think it's fairly evident that both anonymous and transparent systems do not help to build trust. And we earlier today we talked about how trust is established. That takes a long time. It's a give and take. It's a vulnerability. We give a piece of information, the other side reciprocates and gives another piece of information, and we continue to build trust between entities, right? And there's limits to that. Traditional methods are limited by individual risk profiles. We talked about the fact that we as individuals or even companies and governments, everybody has a different level of risk profile. There's also decentralized data authority. When you give the data to somebody in a traditional system, there's always the central authority that controls that data that you're giving information to. So in the bank example, I'm giving the bank my information. The bank is saying, "Hey, trust me, I'm going to keep this private." Right? There's also limited collaboration if possible, because again, it's a very slow process of building that trust. You're giving one information and then the other person gives another information. And then sometimes you get to a point, and many times you get to a point where you say, "Hey, I just don't feel comfortable in sharing any additional information with you." At that point, collaboration ends. There's no more collaboration that is possible. So there's limited amount of collaboration, and again, limited amount of data sharing because of every entity's different risk profile, and it results in limited insight. And so, what multi-party computation brings to the table is a variety of different techniques that we use to be able to help resolve a lot of these limitations, right? So we reviewed in different examples, but with multi-party computation, we can still ensure that all the data that is being put into the system can still be private. It can still remain private, and the data still is owned by me or the other person that's putting the data in. Because Partisia blockchain has also put this multi-party computation technology on top of a transparent blockchain, a distributed blockchain, um, there is no central data authority. There's nobody controlling this data, right? So it helps to eliminate the centralized data authority where this authority may say, "Hey, trust me, I won't share this data." Now we have a blockchain system a public blockchain system that can ensure that the data still is distributed and it is not controlled by a central authority. We talked about full collaboration that is possible because you can do with Partisia blockchain's programmable multi-party computation technology. You can do all different types of computation. It's not just one type of a computation like some of the other multi-party computation blockchain technologies can do. We can do a full range of computations. And because everybody can feel confident that their data still is in the control of the person who owns it and you're still keeping it private, you can have full data access from a computation perspective, which allows new insights new collaboration opportunities, new business opportunities, perhaps with the collaboration of data, right? And so with multi-party computation, data sharing, it really um, changes, I think, that dynamic that we talked about, that balance of scale, where where the weight that you're putting on the risk scale is lowered significantly. So the balance uh, that I need to have and the weight that I'm putting into the scale of trust balance is lowered significantly, and in a way where now we can collaborate without feeling so much at risk.
I mean, this is exactly why when Partisia came into my radar, I said, "Look, wait, stop. This is next generation stuff." And it was precisely because not that I'm the smartest cookie in the jar by any means, but I've been around this industry for quite a while, and and even before, it's been a few moments in my life where I saw something that is absolutely a game changer that made me sit down and just stop and think about the implications that this would have. And I myself, from my academic background, I saw the difficulties in just plain research between different universities that we simply were not allowed to share data because there was private information. And I was talking to my professors, but the wealth of data and knowledge that if we all came collectively together in terms of sheer statistical analysis would just amplify all of our research together. There has to be a way. There has to be the way. There has to be no, it's impossible. We can't do it. It's just impossible. And now it is possible. So
Yes.
and not only in research institutions, I mean any kind of institutions, any kind of company business, this just revolutionizes the stretches and limits of what is able to be achieved in terms of cooperation without needing to trust, which is again, remember last week we talked about when I discovered Bitcoin, and most of us, and it was pitched to us that it's a trustless system. You don't need to trust anyone to be able to interact with them, which is true. But that's in a very limited scope of generation one blockchain, which is Bitcoin, because obviously transaction cannot be reversed there. So from there comes the trust. Here it's just the first generation blockchain who's actually had a solution and an actual use case for society that did not exist before. I mean, it did in a centralized manner, but now it's public and available to anyone around the world to be able to interact with any or one organization or an individual with anyone in the world, and you're able to share without needing to trust. I mean, it kind of reminds me a bit when those checks that you used to write with like, I'm going to, hey Bruce, here's a check for $1,000 here, trust me, because the bank trusts me that I'm not going to misuse this checkbook because it's a credit line, right? Kind of a credit line. And I'm going to give you a check for $1,000. Now you go to the bank and you pray that I have those funds in my bank account. Otherwise, you will not get the funds. So it was. So now, when with multi-party computation, what happens is when I share with you, when I give you that check of data or whatever, you know for a fact that it is valid. It is absolutely coherent. It's not been violated with, it's not been tampered with, and you don't need to know who I am. You don't need to even know my name, and you be able to trust the data that it is sound. And this is just mind bending and game changer.
Yeah, I felt the same way when I found this. I was like, wow, this is like magic. How do you do this? And so I think we'll leave the link below in the description of Ivan's really simple example of actually how does this actually work? It's actually mathematics, and it's actually there's a science behind it, right? So we'll leave that link in the bottom. But yeah, I was the same. I had the same feeling. I was like, oh my God, this really is a game changer. And so maybe what we can do is talk about some of the examples
Perfect.
of how this can work. and so there's a myriad of different examples that we can go through where there's how much of an advantage that you could have by again reducing the the weight that you're putting in the balance scale of trying to establish trust.
So we can take a look at one of the examples here, which is fraud detection. And in this example, we have two financial organizations. We have financial company A and financial company B. And of course, like any other companies that are either in competition with each other, or even if they're collaborating with each other, they're not really going to share a lot of information that they don't have to. In this case, let's say that they're not going to share their book of business. Now, because company A and company B has mutual clients, there's a lot of interactions that are happening between the two companies. And as a result, there is a separate information that you can abstract out if you're able to share the book of business. Now, let's say that there is suspicious activities. Maybe there's a person named Bob that is doing front running, and we could take a look at the front running situation in a traditional sense. He has some private information that he's not allowed to share, but he uses that to his advantage. He, places an order in company B, but then he sells it in company A, as an example, whatever the case is. Now, Bob is doing suspicious activities, but because they are transacted between different multiple companies, organizations, and because these companies are unable to share the data together, it's very difficult to figure out whether or not Bob is actually doing something legitimate or if he's actually doing some kind of an illegal activity. With multi-party computation, company A and company B now has the ability to share data between them and do some kind of a computation, do analysis on that data. And they can say, hey, you know what? All of these people, we've checked all of our books of businesses between the two companies. We shared our data in this private data lake, as an example, like the terminology that I mentioned. We shared this data in a private data lake. We ran some sort of a computation, and we found out that all of these people are legitimate activities. We don't want to share those names because they're private. We don't want to share them. But these activities are clean. But there is one person that looks very suspicious. At that point, you can say, okay, this person, his name is Bob, and looks like he was doing kind of a front-running, activity. So this is a great example of how you can actually implement more advanced types of fraud detection in a financial organization. The other type of work that we can do using MPC is share data to help with things like audits or regulatory compliance. So there's actually a mandate in the European Union, CSDR, and this mandate requires all of the companies of a certain size in the EU to validate that they are meeting certain sustainability goals. And I believe the first sustainability goal is in regards to executive pay gender gap that may exist in companies. And so how are you able to share that information without exposing the actual salary of individual people? And you could do that by using multi-party computation. So you have company A that says, okay, these are our executives, these are the genders, and this is the salary that they make. But when we put that into the system for computation, I want to keep the salary information private because salary information should be private. Company B does the same thing, sends it over into the blockchain. This way, we have company A and company B submitting information to a trustless, decentralized blockchain, right? Can't change it. Everybody sees what information that they put in. But the salary information is still kept private. And then what you can do is you can send out a computation of that salary. So at the bottom right, you can see the public data. The public data shows, hey, company A, the male and female executive average salary was $350K. Company B had a discrepancy. This information can be made public. And then the auditors that have given different rights from a governance perspective, now they have the ability now to go in and say, okay, let's take a look at Company A. And only the auditors are able to now break open the secret data. And them actually breaking into the secret data, because it's on a blockchain, you can actually see it. See that it is the people that have authority to see it, is only the people that are accessing this data. They can see and audit the actual information, say that the public data has been verified, and Company A is meeting the requirements from an audit perspective, from a regulatory perspective, and Company B still has some work to do.
Mm-hmm.
So we actually have a lot of these different organizations that already have signed up and is working with us to use our technology for solving some of these collaboration of data issues. So CyberPeace Institute is a very interesting example of how they are looking to allow and give the power to NGOs when they are hit by a malware in the past, in order for them to be able to help combat the malware that they were hit with, they would have to publicly disclose and saying that, hey, listen, we were hit by a malware in some level of a public setting, right? And request assistance. Well, that puts exposure, and risk to them, right? First of all, if a particular NGO was hit by a malware and they said, hey, listen, we're hit by a malware, people will know what type of a malware they were hit with, what kind of vulnerabilities they actually may have in their system, and potentially attract other people to attack even further, either right now or in the future. It also impacts their reputation. Perhaps they were hit with it, but maybe it was just a small hit. But if you go out to public with this information, it impacts their reputation. It impacts with how social media is reacting these days. It impacts reputation in a very significant way, where the impact may be greater than what they were really truly hit with, right? And so CyberPeace Institute is now helping these NGOs and allowing them to privately share that they potentially may have this attack signature with other NGOs without revealing what those signatures are, allowing the match to occur. And then if there is a match, then allow those NGOs to kind of work together to help solve problems together in a collaborative way without exposing themselves out to the public. The other use case we talked a little bit about is Mututally. This is the exact same use case that we talked about, where the CSDR requirements are requiring businesses to report on their SDG goals. And again, the first SDG goal that they need to adhere to is the pay gender gap between executives and between male and female. And so the example that we shared in example 2 is exactly what Mututally is looking to solve by using Partisia blockchain's unique technologies. And the third example is Original. This is actually a supply chain where they are able to allow different parts of the supply chain to be able to send information in a privatized way to ensure that the medication that is being transported through this chain, when it hits the actual user, that it is the original, that it is the authentic, it is not a falsified or fake medicine. And fake medication is a huge industry issue. And so Original is helping us to ensure that the medication is the actual real medication that was created by the pharmacies when it actually hits the user's hands. And so we have a whole bunch of different partners and integrators. We talked about CyberPeace Institute, we talked about Mututally, we talked about Original. There's also DST. This is the Danish statistics organization. And so it really allows us to, well, it enables us to allow for, like we talked about, mutually distrustful parties to collaborate together and share data in a privatized form, but still be able to compute on it so that they can lower that risk versus trust balance that everybody has to take, and come up with different ways of gaining insight, different ways of doing business, from government entities to corporations to even individual. It really creates a new way to collaborate together in a trustless way.
Absolutely. And this slide is really powerful. It really powerful. Because for anyone who follows our space, from the typical blockchain user or DeFi user or dApp user, Web3 user, whatever name you like to give it. When you see these presentations about, you know, the best use cases for our technology, when I say ours, it's just whatever name or whatever project you'd like to name. You usually see integrations between dApps or between blockchains. Here you see legacy, quote unquote, legacy systems, real world organizations tackling real world problems. So this just goes to show the power of the Partisia blockchain. It's not only about creating the next best DEX to protect against front running. It's not about creating the let's disrupt eBay with the next dApp that's going to create secret auctions, but it's about traceability of counterfeit versus original medicines, which is like incredibly serious. It's about protecting NGOs who have a fundamental impact in the way that society is being shaped and help balance the world against inequalities in various aspects, and how Partisia blockchain can mitigate their risk against attacks, and how they can cooperate to create a united front against attackers without actually, you know, sharing private information about their internal organization. So this slide is really really powerful, because it just shows that there is a demand there is a need for this technology, and that people are taking notice. Yeah, what can I say? It's really exciting to see the development of all these partnerships.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and I think that's the one of the ethos or the vision of Partisia blockchain that is different than many other blockchains that are out there. We're not looking to disrupt the space. We're not looking to destroy the traditional financial system and create a brand new one.
Mm-hmm.
We're really all about collaboration. We're really all about trying to solve real problems that are out there by collaborating with different teams. So yeah, I'm with you. This technology and the vision that Partisia blockchain has really does inspire me quite a bit. And I think there's a lot more benefits that we will be able to provide for the world through this technology. So great points.
Well, that wraps it up for this week's Spotlight series. Thank you, everyone who are watching us. We still have one more episode in this series. I'm not going to reveal what it is. Stay tuned. It's going to be a fun one. It's going to be a fun one for many of our community, for sure. It's also one that's very near and dear to me, but I'm not going to reveal what. So stay tuned. Bruce, thank you very much for your presentation. Awesome, as always, very insightful. And to anyone out there who is watching us, once again, if it's the first time you are watching one of these videos and you are interested in knowing more or to talk to us, please do join our channels, our Telegram or our Discord. Get in touch with our admins or with Bruce, whose name is Bunga, or myself, Tiago_S. And let's have a conversation. Let us help you develop ideas on how MPC technology, how the Partisia blockchain can potentially contribute to the success of your project. Or if you have some novel idea, hey, I just saw this presentation and I think that there is a use case that wasn't explored, just come talk to us. We are more than happy to take this conversation forward. We have many people interested and it's our mission to try to match developers with entrepreneurs, institutions with other institutions. So yeah, just don't be shy, jump into our channels and come meet us. We'll be happy to take this conversation forward.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
Thank you very much, everyone, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
guys. Bye.